Today, it's hard to imagine, but 50 years ago, Amsterdam looked like this. It was just as chaotic and polluted as any other big city in the world. Images that now seem unthinkable, but they really happened. Streets packed with cars, clouds of smog, and children getting hit on their way to school. The people in charge believed the solution to all this chaos was to fill the canals with concrete to build highways and office towers. For a while, Amsterdam wanted to look like Los Angeles or Detroit, and it almost did. In this video, I want to show you how Dutch cities went from this to this. It was a long journey with protests, mistakes, and tough decisions that forever changed urban life and culture. But what really matters to me is that you understand the process, because understanding how they did it also helps explain why so many other countries still can't do it. At the end of the 19th century, when the modern bicycle started becoming popular in Europe, the Dutch embraced it with enthusiasm. Partly because the country is flat, anyone could afford one, and the weather, while rainy, wasn't extreme. Also, while other European cities were expanding outward, Dutch cities stayed compact. But more than anything, the bicycle matched the Dutch culture. Practical, modest, and rational. Where showing off doesn't matter, what matters is getting there fast and cheap. The bicycle was simply the best option. By 1930, there were over 2 million bicycles in a country with 8 million people. And they already had some basic infrastructure with shared lanes and parking areas. But all of that collapsed during the Second World War, which destroyed 60% of the country's entire transportation infrastructure. Roads, bridges, train stations. Entire cities like Rotterdam were wiped out. When the war ended, the need to rebuild everything from scratch opened the door to very different models of urban planning. A decision had to be made, and as unbelievable as it seems now, it wasn't in favor of the bicycle. During the 1950s and 1960s, the car became the symbol of progress around the world. Cheap, accessible, and glamorous, it represented personal freedom and modern mobility. The growing Dutch middle class, boosted by the economic boom from the discovery of natural gas in Groningen, welcomed cars with excitement. Between 1950 and 1970, the number of bike trips dropped sharply, while the number of cars went from 139,000 to over 3.4 million. Urban planning ideas followed this trend too. City planners dreamed of modernizing Dutch cities with wide avenues, overpasses, tunnels, and highways running through them. They wanted cities to look like American ones, redesigned for cars. People would live in the suburbs and travel into the city to work or study. In this context, the city of Amsterdam, with funding from the car lobby group Stichting Weg, hired American urban planner David Jokinen in 1967. And the American dream nearly destroyed the city. His plan was one of the most radical ever proposed for Amsterdam and included completely demolishing the working-class neighborhoods of De Pape and Kinkerberd to make space for highway access, removing the tram lines and turning public transportation into a secondary service, filling the iconic Sint-Gelrecht Canal with concrete to build a 6-lane avenue, building a ring-shaped highway system with monorails that would go straight into the historic city center where office towers would be built. Ironically, the project that aimed to destroy everything that makes Amsterdam special was called Give the City a Chance. Luckily, none of this ever happened. But parts of that vision did become reality, and in many places, entire buildings were torn down to build new avenues or widen existing ones. Meanwhile, as bicycles disappeared from the streets, the number of traffic accidents soared. In 1971, the Netherlands reached the shocking number of more than 3,000 people killed in traffic accidents. Over 500 of them were children. And one of those children was Simone Langendonk, the son of a journalist who published a heartbreaking letter titled Stop de Kindermoord, Stop the Murder of Children. This phrase became the slogan and symbol of parent groups who began organizing spontaneous protests. It was one of the world's first citizen-led urban movements. They weren't architects or engineers, they were parents and neighbors who felt their city was killing them. Later, other citizen groups joined the movement, like unions and students. One of the most symbolic moments was when mothers with baby strollers and bicycles took over the streets holding photos of dead children. The images were powerful. Thousands of people marching in silence, occupying the avenues that planners had dreamed of filling with cars. And little by little, the pressure began to work. In 1972, the Dutch government published a report admitting that expanding the car-centered model was financially and environmentally unsustainable. And that's when people started talking about alternatives. Finally, the oil crisis of 1973 delivered the final blow to the car model. Within weeks, oil prices tripled, and the Netherlands, heavily dependent on imported oil, was forced to rethink its entire mobility strategy. The Dutch government introduced fuel rationing and the famous car-free Sundays. For several weekends, the whole country came to a stop. Roads and streets emptied of cars. But bicycles returned, and families came out to walk on the avenues. For the first time in decades, people saw what a car-free city could feel like. For the Dutch, it was the realization that a different kind of city was not only possible, it was better. Bicycle sales skyrocketed. It was in this moment of crisis that the Dutch government understood it was time to rethink the whole city model. And that's when the world's most advanced biking paradise began to take shape. The first changes were local, almost experimental. In some cities, urban planners started testing short stretches of bike lanes painted bright red to make cyclists more visible. But they soon realized that an isolated bike lane doesn't change anything. What transforms a city is a full network. It wasn't about having a few paths. It was about redesigning the entire logic of the city so that the bicycle could truly replace the car. In Delft, for example, they created the first continuous urban bike network, where every segment connected to the next, allowing people to ride across the whole city without interruptions. The results were immediate. Car use dropped, cycling increased, and accidents went down. Its success inspired other cities like Groningen, Utrecht, and The Hague, which adopted the full network model and began developing city plans centered on bike mobility. Meanwhile, at the national level, the government began investing in infrastructure like never before. Infrastructure designed with extreme attention to detail so that riding a bike would always be more convenient, faster, and safer than driving a car. To start with, there are segregated bike lanes. In other countries, they're often placed wherever it's easiest, but the Dutch understood they should go where people actually need to go. These bike lanes are often not just painted stripes on the road, they're completely separated from car traffic. It's common for cyclists and cars to never share the same roadway. This eliminates one of the main reasons people avoid biking in other countries: fear. And they are perfectly designed. The pavement is smooth, the lanes are wide, there are no sharp turns, no interruptions, and sometimes they're even protected from wind. Riding a bike in the Netherlands isn't just safe, it's enjoyable. But what really makes the Dutch model special is that the entire country is connected by a continuous cycling infrastructure network. A network that stretches over 37,000 kilometers and even connects small villages to large cities. You can leave your home in a suburb of Rotterdam and bike 60 kilometers to Utrecht without thinking twice, and without ever having to share the road with a car. On a map, it looks like a network of arteries, just as dense as the highway systems in any modern country. And that's just the beginning. Intersections in the Netherlands are true gems of urban design. In many of them, cyclists have their own crossing lanes, separate from motor traffic, with smooth turns and full visibility. Traffic lights also have specific signals just for bikes, and even priority sensors that detect large groups of cyclists and give them a green light before the cars. Some crossings use bike roundabouts, where cars must wait and yield to cyclists. It's a complete change in the hierarchy. And for those who use a bike every day, comfort is key too. That's why there are railings to hold on to while waiting at a red light, so you don't have to get off the saddle. And gentle ramps to make it easier to cross bridges or hills. Everything is designed so the bicycle doesn't feel like an uncomfortable alternative, but the standard of convenience. There are underground bike tunnels to avoid crossing highways, and even drawbridges just for bikes to cross canals. In some areas, there are true bike highways several kilometers long, connecting entire neighborhoods, running under highways or train tracks. Cyclists can cross entire cities without ever touching a busy street. In the town of Houghton, urban design was taken to an extreme. There's no direct way to cross it by car. Cars can only circle around on a ring road. Inside, all the efficient connections are reserved for pedestrians and cyclists. Another of the most impressive examples is the Hoven Ring, located between the towns of Eindhoven, Veldhoven, and Meerhoven. It's a suspended bike roundabout that looks like something out of a science fiction movie. Biking is so popular that one of the biggest problems is where to park. At train stations, universities, or city centers, there are massive bike parking lots with thousands of spots. In Utrecht, for example, you'll find the world's largest bike parking facility with room for over 12,000 bikes underground. With security, electronic signs showing available spaces, and even a repair service. And while bikes have all this parking, in many cities, car parking spaces have been removed. In city centers, parking for cars has become more expensive, harder to find, and farther from your destination. By taking away infrastructure from cars, the balance tips in favor of bikes. For drivers, every trip becomes a logistical challenge. For cyclists, on the other hand, everything is easier. Unlike traditional cities, where everyone shares the same roads and fights for space, in Dutch cities, bikes and cars use different networks. Different routes, different traffic lights, different rules. While a car is still going around in circles, the bike has already arrived. These aren't just quiet streets, they're streets designed so the bike always wins. All of this leads to another key point. The bicycle doesn't compete with transportation, it complements it. The system was designed from the start to be multimodal. That's why it's common to see bike access ramps on trains, designated bike spaces on ferries, and bike lanes that connect directly to transport hubs. In many small towns, the daily commute includes a bike ride to the train station and another short ride from the train station to the office or university. The whole system is designed as a smooth, interconnected network. Even the rural landscape has been adapted for cycling. There are dedicated bike routes that pass through fields, dunes, and nature reserves with no interruptions or motor traffic. And no matter how remote they are, all of them are marked and maintained to the highest standards. The bicycle is, quite literally, a way to discover a country where more than 27% of trips are made by bike, while in most countries, that number doesn't even reach 1%. But there's something else that makes the Netherlands a true paradise for cyclists. It's not just the kilometers of bike lanes and infrastructure, not even the road safety statistics, which place the Netherlands among the safest countries in terms of traffic deaths. The most important thing is how people feel. All this infrastructure, which anywhere else would be considered extraordinary, here is so normal that people barely notice it. The Dutch don't ride bikes because they have no other choice. They ride because it's fast, pleasant, and reliable. They do it because it works. It was built so a 6-year-old can ride to school alone, or a 60-year-old woman can visit her grandchildren without needing a car. It's a way of building cities that doesn't just move people, it protects them. In other countries, the bicycle is seen as a temporary fix, or at best, a weekend sport. In the Netherlands, it's something else entirely. Here, everyone rides a bike. Children, executives in suits, housewives, newly arrived immigrants, and even politicians on their way to parliament. There are no cyclists as a separate group, with aerodynamic helmets and carbon fiber bikes like in other countries. There are just people getting from one place to another by bike. And it starts very early. Dutch children learn to ride a bike almost as soon as they learn to walk. By the time they're a few years old, they're already pedaling to preschool with their parents. 50% of elementary school kids and 75% of high schoolers go to school by bike. Because parents aren't afraid of cars hitting them. The streets are built to protect them. Of course, schools have parking areas for hundreds of bicycles. And bike culture isn't just taught at home, it's also taught in the classroom through the famous National Traffic Exam. It's a test taken by almost all kids between ages 10 and 12 as part of their primary education to certify that they understand and follow traffic rules, especially as cyclists. Because everyone rides a bike. A multinational CEO and a food delivery worker can cross paths on the same bike lane. And old bikes with rusty baskets and faded seats are more common than high-end models. All of this has a deep impact. First, in terms of equality. When transportation doesn't depend on your income or your neighborhood, opportunities are shared more fairly. Second, in terms of public health. Just by getting to work or school every day, the Dutch population maintains levels of physical activity that other countries can only achieve through fitness programs or state campaigns. And third, in terms of personal freedom. Because a city designed for bicycles is a city where everyone gains independence, where no one is forced to pay for a car, insurance, parking, or a tank of gas just to live their life. Getting an entire society to move by bike sounds like a flawless utopia. But in the Netherlands, the success of the model has brought its own tensions, logistical challenges, and internal contradictions. The first big issue is overcrowding. In cities like Utrecht, for example, the Vredenburg cycle path is the busiest in the world with over 35,000 bicycles every day. There are literal bike traffic jams. This saturation creates a new layer of urban complexity. Bike lanes need to be constantly widened, redesigned, and prioritized to avoid collisions, especially at intersections with pedestrians or electric scooters, which have multiplied in recent years. Also, the rise of the model is changing bike culture itself. Electric bikes, for instance, are increasing average speeds, which has created new tensions between traditional cyclists and faster users. And with the growing popularity of bike delivery, some previously informal spaces are becoming more professional. This new bike ecosystem has pushed authorities to debate speed limits, separate lanes for electric bikes, and stricter rules for sharing space on crowded bike paths. At the same time, Dutch cities are also facing a quiet invasion, the return of the car. Even in small numbers, population growth and the boom in online shopping have increased the presence of vans, SUVs, and motor traffic in areas that were once dominated by bikes. Some cities are now debating whether to further restrict vehicle access, even for residents. In the end, the biking paradise is not a fixed thing. It evolves, and it faces pressure. And like any successful system, it risks being overloaded if it's not managed wisely. But despite all these challenges, the Netherlands still shows the world that it's possible to build a healthier, more human, and freer city, if there's a will to do it. In most cities around the world, the car is the main character. But in the Netherlands, the car is a guest. This idea, which sounds like a provocation, is written into real urban policy. For example, many residential streets are classified as woonerf, a Dutch word that literally means living street. In these spaces, pedestrians, playing children, cyclists, and cars share the same area. But the motor vehicle is the last in the hierarchy and must move at walking speed. It's not just about changing signs. The entire urban design is adjusted to discourage car use. Streets include intentional obstacles like tighter turns, narrower roads, plant boxes, and maze-like entrances to residential neighborhoods. Everything is designed to make driving slow, uncomfortable, and impractical. In contrast, the bike always has the shortest, fastest, and most direct route. And that's exactly the point. The car loses its strategic advantage, and the bike becomes the most rational option. Everything is designed to reward biking and discourage driving. What they've achieved here is proof that with political will, smart design, and active citizens, it's possible to change the course of a city. That's the end of today's video. I hope you learned something interesting. And if you liked it, don't miss the next one.